Paul Skenes was arguably the best pitcher in fantasy baseball last season. Can he pass the torch to Bubba Chandler in 2026? I'll answer that question and more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominick Martino, riding solo today, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe you to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things, once again, please make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And lastly, give us a chance on the Insider's Track, where we're offering so much fantasy baseball insight this offseason, including keeper and dynasty info. We're going to be doing giveaways and having so much fun on there talking baseball in the offseason. So if that is sounds interesting to you, join us on the Insider's Track. The link's in the bio wherever you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And all right, guys, we got the Pirates on the docket today. Interesting fantasy production from them as a team. You got Paul Skenes, who was, arguably the best pitcher in fantasy baseball. They had a couple of young prospects come up with Bubba Chandler, who had mixed results. So, we're going to talk about his season in 2025. We'll break down his outlook for 2026. O'Neill Cruz had an interesting season, a little bit of a bust, but can we regain some value into 2026? And then the Pirates have the number one prospect in all of baseball in Konnor Griffin. We're going to break Konnor Griffin down, and then I have one more Pirates prospect who is a deep dynasty league sleeper who could potentially be the next Julio Rodriguez. So you're not going to want to miss out on that name either. So you're going to want to stick around for this whole episode. But let's start off at the top. We'll do some Paul Skenes coverage. Paul Skenes, man, just a great start to his career. At 23 years old, you can already say that he's the best pitcher in all of baseball. And I would not really argue with you. I'd give it to you. So Skenes on the season in 2025 had 10 wins, a 1.97 ERA, 32 starts, 187 innings pitched, 216 strikeouts, and he had an 0.94 whip. Just unbelievable production to have that sub-2 ERA for the second year in a row, have a sub-1 whip for the second year in a row, to take a nice leap in innings pitched from his rookie season to his sophomore season, almost 190 innings with 187 pitched. Love that strikeout number with 216 strikeouts. Skenes is just elite at everything he does except the wins, which he cannot control. He pitches deep enough into games to get the wins, but that Pirates team, man, we're hoping that they're going to be better over the next couple of seasons, and we're going to get into that. The contributors, and how it looks from a fantasy perspective. What's going to help us win. Us fantasy players, right? So Skenes is definitely going to be one of those guys. I'm not mad at you if you want to take him. I would never really advise taking a starting pitcher in the first round of fantasy baseball. So I wouldn't say first round, but if you wanted to take high value starting pitching in the second round, to come after your number one bat. I could see Paul Skenes being that guy. He's just elite at everything he does. Love the pitch mix from the young Skenes. He's got, one, two, he's got a bunch of pitches, man. He just keeps kind of adding to that repertoire. Obviously, he leads with that 98 mile an hour fastball on average. Batters hit 202 against that. His sweeper is also super dominant, gets a lot of movement on that pitch. Batters hit 150 against that one. He throws that one about 16% of the time. The fastball comes 40% of the time. Then he mixes in a splitter. Didn't get great results on that one this year. Batters at 277 against it. The changeup was dominant, though. Batters at 103 against that. So, Skenes just really good at everything he does. Gets the, the movement on the pitches. He's a big guy, 6'6", 260. He's intimidating. And at 23 years old, we just hope for, Paul Skenes to be doing this for a long time. And I really don't see any reason that he won't be able to, dominate for years to come. So Paul Skenes, great season in 2025 from a fantasy perspective. And if you want to take him as the number one overall starting pitcher in fantasy baseball in 2026, I'd aim to grab him in the second round because I don't think grabbing a starting pitcher in the first round is ever a great move. So, guys, there's a little take on Paul Skenes. But let's move on to who's potentially up next when we're talking about starting pitching for this Pirates team. It could be the young Bubba Chandler. Now, listen. He didn't get off to a hot start in the bigs. It was a little bit of a rough go of it. But Bubba Chandler actually finished pretty strong, down the stretch, to be honest with you. So, came out in his first two, only threw 4 innings, wasn't so bad. Got hit around by the Dodgers in his, third go of it. Then he had another bad one against Milwaukee where he only pitched 2.2 innings and gave up a bunch of earned runs. Things were starting to look really bad. Let's talk about Bubba Chandler's last 3 starts, though. On September 13th, 6 innings against the Washington Nationals, 7 strikeouts, 1 earned run, a 0.33 whip. On September 20th against the Athletics, 5 innings, got the win, 6 strikeouts, no earned runs, and 0.2 whip. Against the Atlanta Braves in his last start on September 27th, Bubba Chandler, once again, who we're talking about here, of those Pittsburgh Pirates. 5.2 innings pitched, got the win, 6 strikeouts, 1 earned run, 0.71 whip. And if you put even just Bubba Chandler's numbers in the bigs on season total together, it's a 4.02 ERA, an 0.93 whip, 31 innings pitched, 31 strikeouts. So with a guy like Bubba Chandler, who was a top 10 prospect in all of baseball before getting the call, and I don't see why he couldn't maybe not be as good as obviously his counterpart in Paul Skenes. But I think there's top 30, 40 starting pitcher upside here with Bubba Chandler, right? Has that nice, big, elite fastball, one of the better fastballs in, all of the minors. And honestly, I don't want to say in all of the bigs yet because it's small sample size, but Bubba Chandler's got some really good stuff. And obviously, like I said, leads with that fastball. Now, when he got up to the bigs, like I said, mixed bag of results, but kind of want to get into the pitch mix once again. That fastball averages 99 miles an hour when he got up to the bigs. It did get hit at a 292 clip, but I think it was just sitting a little bit flat, but did manage to get that movement that he had on it, that he was known for coming up in the bigs through his last couple of starts. Got consistently good results on the changeup and the slider. He did throw a curveball about 6% of the time, got hit around a little bit. But I think the key is if Chandler gets that fastball moving like we had seen it in the minors in past seasons. Because even in the minors last year, Chandler got hit around a little bit. It was a tough go of it, But now he's up in the bigs, right? Now you get the professional, coaching staff. You got, the trainers. You get to, be beside Paul Skenes and pick his brain and see what he's seeing out there. And I really think that's going to help take, Bubba Chandler to the next level. Just want to give you guys a little insight on this minor league track record. In 2024, across 2 levels, which was AA and AAA, Chandler made 23 starts. He had a 3.08 ERA, 119 innings pitched, 148 strikeouts, and a 1.01 whip. So just to give you that insight, he could be a big strikeout guy with a nice ERA and solid control. Bubba Chandler in 2026, the fantasy value for him, my personal opinion is I don't think we're going to have to pay too much unless he has a big spring training. If Bubba Chandler is out there in spring training and he's lighting it up, he's going to fly up draft boards. If he's having a mediocre spring training, I like I said, I think I'm still going to have him in the SP 40 to 50 range, closer to the 50 side of things. And once again, that's if things are looking right. If anything, you take him as a late round flyer if things are looking bad in spring training. I think there's so much variance on where Bubba Chandler could be drafted in 2026. Me personally, like I said, probably gonna have him in that top 50, near the lower end of it. I'm probably gonna be looking at him as like a lower end, SP5, higher end SP6, and that's just off the top of my head without me really deep diving my pitcher rankings. But I do really like the upside here of Bubba Chandler, especially what he did across his last 3 starts. And before we continue and we talk about the rest of the pitching situation in Pittsburgh and the outlook on guys like Mitch Keller, Braxton Ashcraft for 2026, and talk about what happened with O'Neill Cruz, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I need to talk to you about my friends over at Ruget. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Ruget Ready. Ruget Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pill that can take hours, Ruget's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in only 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Ruget might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Ruget connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships treatment discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more comfortable and present in the moment. Head to Ruget.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code LockedOnMLB to get 15% off today. That's Ruget.com/LockedOnMLB. And once again, use that promo code LockedOnMLB for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compound drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved. Do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Ruget website to view full safety information. And all right, guys, once again, if you're a fantasy baseball fanatic like myself and you just can't get enough of it, join Matt and I on the Insider's Track, right? Where we're covering fantasy baseball year round. And we're deep diving keeper, stuff this time of year. We're doing dynasty. I got my 2026 rankings rough draft ready. So if you join us on, the Insider's Track, where the link's in the bio, I can get that sent out to you. Just ask for it. I got it sent over to you. Real rough draft of 2026 rankings. Then we'll be doing giveaways, just that fantasy baseball talk year round. So if that sounds interesting to you, join us on the Insider's Track. The link's in the bio. If you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. But all right, let's keep this episode moving, guys. Let's keep the pitching talk going. Let's talk about Mitch Keller, right? Mitch Keller, he's kind of, I can't even say reliable because he's not reliable, but Mitch Keller's been around for a little bit and he's helped, fantasy teams, get statistics for, quite a few seasons at this point. I've never really been a Mitch Keller guy. There's been times where I've wanted to buy in, and I never really full-heartedly did it. And at 29 years old this past season, gave you very Mitch Keller stats, a 4.19 ERA, 32 starts, 176 innings, 150 strikeouts, a 1.25 whip. I think that's just who Mitch Keller is. The reason I put him on this episode is I think there's value in what Mitch Keller does. It's a late end, towards the back of your draft kind of guy. I don't really want to cover him too much. Just figured we throw him in this episode just to mention that I don't think there's any upside here. I don't think we should be talking about a Mitch Keller breakout going into 2026 or anything of the sort. But I also don't think he should be overlooked in the sense of like, he's just the same guy, 4 ERA. But you know what the whole thing is? You can find reliability in, playing the matchups, and just figuring out where he, is going to be good. And in an NL-only league, a guy like this is going to be useful. 15-man like this, a guy like this is going to be useful, where he's giving you 32 starts year in and year out. A low 4s ERA means that there are times when he's useful. That K per 9 has never really panned out the way we thought it was going to. He had that over K per 9 season in 2023 where he was an all-star. Mitch Keller was. The last 2 seasons, though, it's been very similar under that K per 9. The whip's been a little bit elevated. I think Mitch Keller is more of a matchup play in his later age. Let's keep things moving here, and let's talk about Jared Jones. Listen, Jared Jones was injured this year, so we really, didn't get to, see if he can, build off of what he did in 2024, where Jones was useful in fantasy. Wasn't he? I wouldn't say he was like groundbreaking or anything like that. Had some moments, but as a 22-year-old in 2024, Jared Jones pitched to a 4.14 ERA. That's over 22 starts, 121 innings, 132 strikeouts with a 1.19 whip. Now, I like Jared Jones. He's another guy that the Pirates have, kind of developed here. 6', 190. He's not of the Paul Skenes, Bubba Chandler build, but still, you can get stuff done. Didn't have a great track record out in the minors, but, Pirates have actually been known for, doing stuff with pitching. You think about Glass, now you think about Cole. Guys like that, the Pirates do tend to, figure things out with starting pitching. I think, once again, I think Jared Jones could be of the Bubba Chandler type and get overhyped, or there's going to just be a lot of variance in where he can be drafted. If he comes out and has, a big spring trainings, looking good, looking ready to go, like he's going to just be out there in April, start of, the season, and just Jared Jones is in the rotation, I think he gets overhyped because I think people remember the good parts of that 2024 season, not so much the bad. But, he's got good stuff. Another guy with a pretty solid, pretty strong fastball. He sits at 97 on average. Batters hit 224 against it. He gets good movement on it. The slider is another strong pitch for Jared Jones, which he throws 34% of the time. Sits at about 89. Batters hit 207 against it. It's really just that third pitch for Jones, right? Because sitting fastball slider, that's a combo that major league hitters see, fairly often. So you kind of need this curveball or changeup that he was throwing in 2024 to be that next pitch, but they were both getting walloped, right? The curveball got hit at a 348 clip and the changeup got hit at a 325 clip. So neither of those pitches were making a big difference from Jared Jones. I kind of just want to see how he looks in spring training, see what the Pirates are saying about him. If he has if he's developed that third pitch, whether it's the changeup, curveball, or something else that is going to, help throw hitters off, I think there could be really good results here with Jared Jones. But Jared Jones isn't going to be somebody I'm like super, super excited to draft. If we can get him late, throw the flyer at him, at his young age and, potential upside here, I think it could be, interesting. I don't think he has the upside, once again, though, of a Bubba Chandler or obviously a Paul Skenes. So Jared Jones, 26 outlook, like I said, kind of just want to see where he's being drafted. If I can get him late, I'll throw the dart, but he's just not somebody that I'm going to be like attached to or somebody I really want to go out of my way to, to put on my team. All right, let's move on to, some hitters. Let's do bats. Let's do O'Neill Cruz, man. Interesting year from O'Neill Cruz. Disappointing year from O'Neill Cruz, man. I really expected more from him. The batting average was horrible. He started off great with steals, but honestly slowed down with steals towards the end of the season as well. O'Neill Cruz hit that Mendoza line perfectly, hit 200 on the season, over 135 games, 471 at-bats, 62 runs, 18 doubles, 3 triples, 21 homers, 61 RBIs, 38 steals, had 64 walks to 174 strikeouts. So, the plate discipline got a little bit better than it did last year, but he loses about 60 points of batting average, O'Neill Cruz does. Gives you a lot more steals, one less home run, in less games. O'Neill Cruz is still 26 years old, right? And I think the talent's still there, man. I can't figure out, the reason for the huge drop-off in batting average. The plate discipline, took a step in the right direction. He's not chasing more than the average player. Like that took a step in the right direction. The X batting average is only 229 and it was, 263 last year. So this is worth a deeper dive here in the offseason. It could be an issue. Even maybe he was. He wasn't. As I'm looking at this, I'm just I'm eliminating things that that could have been the issue. I think it could take a turn in the right direction. I think O'Neill Cruz is a student of the game. He gets in the lab in the offseason, the big 6'7", 240, 27-year-old. I just really think, and he just turned 27 the other day. So happy belated to O'Neill Cruz. His birthday was on October 4th. Recording here on October 9th. So shout out to O'Neill Cruz. Man, I think he has to be better next year. I think we're going to get way better value on O'Neill Cruz than we did last year, where he was taken. Hold on, I do have ADP from last year. Pretty handily available. 14th outfielder, pick 41 for O'Neill Cruz. So that's crazy. If you can get O'Neill Cruz as a low-end outfielder number 2, a high-end outfielder number 3, I want to say that's going to wind up being like, what, a seventh, eighth round pick. That's going to be way better value than where we had to take him like the fourth round this past season. So with O'Neill Cruz, I think I'm buying back in because a lot of the underlying stuff, kind of just says that, he could be a lot better than he was this season. He's in the 93rd percentile sprint speed. He hits the ball really hard, barrels it well, has good bat speed. I think he just needs to square up a little bit better, maybe less ground balls, kind of get that ball, in the air a little bit more and just be motivated to play because it's tough to play for a bad team. When I look at this bad season by O'Neill Cruz, it reminds me of the bad seasons that Juan Soto had back with the Nationals. So, I like I said, not that O'Neill Cruz could ever be Juan Soto, but I think there's a lot of upside here with O'Neill Cruz. I honestly think he could be like a 250, 260 guy with 30 home runs, 40-plus steals, and it just depends on how good this Pirates team could be for counting stats. But before we move on and, we talk about Andy Rodriguez, Jared Triolo, and we get into Konnor Griffin, who's the number one prospect in all of baseball. And then, guys, I didn't forget, I got that one sneaky sleeper dynasty keeper player for you, so you're going to want to make sure you stay locked on for the whole episode. And all right, guys, I got to talk to you about my friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting the tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. You know what I mean? That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app made it super simple, and I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. Fees are included. Know your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. I personally love the zone deals. You get to pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And all right, guys, let's keep things going. Actually, somebody that, I didn't even mention this, who we're going to go with next. Let's talk about Bryan Reynolds, man. I feel like we talked about Bryan Reynolds. I believe it was on the Bust episode. And, for good reason. Bryan Reynolds was kind of supposed to be old, reliable in your fantasy lineup in 2025, just because we know who he's been, and he's been giving you pretty similar production. The last 3, even 4 seasons have been somewhat similar. But this year he kind of disappointed, and he played basically the same amount of games he has the past few years. The batting average dropped off to 245 for Bryan Reynolds. He's a career 271 guy. 16 homers over the last 3 seasons. He's averaged about 25. 73 RBIs over the last 3-4 seasons. He's averaged about 80. 68 runs, last 3-4 seasons, he's averaged about 80. So Bryan Reynolds took a step back in every category. He's 30 years old. He's going to be 31 next year. I think Bryan Reynolds is just somebody I'm fading. I don't think I'm going to have too many shares of Bryan Reynolds next year. I'd rather shoot for the stars, and especially when you look at some of the underlying stuff. And Reynolds took a little step back in some of these things, and when you're talking about barreling, you're talking about hard hit, bear with me. Yeah, no, actually, still about the same quickness for Reynolds, but still, going into age 31 next year. Just like I said, it depends on the value. Maybe if we get Reynolds at a good value, kind of want to pull up once again. I do have ADP handy. We were taking Reynolds as the 27th outfielder, pick 86. So that was like a high-end outfielder number 3 or a low-end outfielder number 2 for Bryan Reynolds. If you get him as a bench bat, I'm not going to be mad at that, because I think there is a chance that obviously that Reynolds gets back to similar form. I don't think he just lost everything at age 30, but I do think, at this age, you could see a considerable step back. So if Reynolds in 2026 winds up being like a 260 bat with 22 home runs, 80 RBIs, 80 runs, I think that's about, what we should be expecting. I don't think we expect him to, mid 20 homers with 90 and 90 and, a 270 plus batting average. So I don't think we're looking for that. I think we're looking for, like I said, a little bit less than what he's normally done. But Bryan Reynolds, I still think he could be useful for fantasy, just not somebody that's, super sexy. So probably somebody I'm personally not going to have a lot of shares of. Maybe he could be a stabilizer if I take like a super risky team, because even when I say, he underperformed this year, I still even think this is like the floor. I think this is like the worst version of Bryan Reynolds that we could potentially see. So I don't think it gets much worse than this. So even at that, I could see buying in as a bench bat with Bryan Reynolds in 2026. Let's keep things going here. Let's talk about, don't know if we're going to have so much time to do Jared Triolo and Endy Rodriguez. We'll do Endy. With Triolo was still a younger kid, somebody that could wind up panning out, came over to Pittsburgh last year, and could be a home for him. So Jared Triolo is somebody that keep your eye on. But let's do Endy Rodriguez, because Endy Rodriguez was a little bit of a higher end prospect. He was actually projected to be really, really good. It dealt with injuries and stuff like that, missed the whole 2024 season, never really got his chance to, show out. Even this year, only 18 games played. And I really think there could be something here with Endy. Has had good seasons down in the minors. When you look back at 2021 and 2022, where let's do the 2022 season, where he played 125 games, 458 at-bats, had 92 runs, 39 doubles, 4 triples, 25 homers, 95 RBIs, 4 steals, had 60 walks, 201 strikeouts, and hit 323. I hate to throw another name out there, but even like, I don't know what's going on with the young bats in Pittsburgh. I talked about how they're very good with the young pitching. The young bats haven't really been panning out, and it's tough to see with a guy like Endy. Dynasty keeper formats, dynasty where you kind of keep your whole team. If he's out there, I might kind of just want to grab him, or even if you have to give up a very, very low end kind of a trade for a guy like Endy Rodriguez, who's still only going to be 26 years old next season. I think there's a world where he's a little bit better than he's shown. I'm still kind of just hoping on that prospect pedigree, and that he's still trying to make his way back from, a plethora of injuries, but there is some potential upside here. Now let's do the fun stuff. Now let's do, if you stuck around, where it's going to pay off. We'll do Konnor Griffin. I mean, if you're familiar with baseball, you might already know Konnor Griffin is the number 1 prospect in all of baseball for very good reason. Konnor Griffin's just a mountain of a man at 6'4", 225. Runs like a horse for a guy that size, and hits tanks. He's got power. Over 122 games, over 3 levels. Konnor Griffin in the minors this year hit 333 with 117 runs, 23 doubles, 4 triples, 21 homers, 94 RBIs, and he stole 65 bags. The kid's going to be really good, man. I don't know if he continues to steal bags at a clip like this. Maybe he's got that Paul Goldschmidt in him for a big guy, and he can, give you consistent steals. But I don't know about 65, consistently. But if Konnor Griffin could be I'm talking about like first full season, if he could be a 30-30 kind of guy with a plus batting average, you're talking about a guy that could potentially hit 280, 290. Konnor Griffin's going to be really good. Think of like Roman Anthony type skills, and type prospect pedigree. That's where Konnor Griffin sits right now, going into the 2026 season. Even without a guarantee that he's making the team, he's somebody I'll probably be throwing a dart at the end of drafts. I'll definitely be stashing him going into the 2026 season, because once Konnor Griffin gets the call, it's going to be wild. Now, that deeper cut for all you dynasty players, all your deep league players that get to keep a lot of guys, Edward Florentino. If you don't know him, remember the name. Up to the 81st prospect in all of baseball, one of the biggest risers through the minor league systems, through any team. Florentino was. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, and it gives me Julio Rodriguez kind of vibes, right? In the minors across 2 levels, hit 290 this year, 83 games, 60 runs, 23 doubles, 2 triples, 16 homers, 59 steals, had 49 walks, 78 strikeouts. Had 59 RBIs with 35 steals and 49 walks of 78 strikeouts. This kid's going to be really good. He's still only 18 years old. Sky is the limit. I think his value is going to skyrocket next year if he continues to doing this. Like I said, 81st prospect right now. I think he's got top 15 prospect upside, and like I said, could be even higher than that once he gets to the bigs. Still developing, still growing. He could just be. He could be really, really, really good, man. And I think that if he's available in your league and you could make pickups or, off-season moves, I would grab him right now. Literally, I'd pause the podcast and go and see if you can grab him. I think he's going to be that good, potentially. And I don't know if Florentino's a 2026 kind of guy, but for you guys that play Dynasty like I do, I have Florentino in all my Dynasty leagues. So he's somebody that I would definitely acquire, power, speed. And I think Pittsburgh might be cooking something up. So he might be playing for a playoff team in, 2-3 years from now. But guys, that is going to be all for today. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. For your second listen today, go check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. But guys, that is all for today. Until next time, see you.